what has always been there in my life that I've been ignoring? And that actually, if I could do anything in the world, knowing that I'm going to die and I'm not going to be here forever, in my case, you almost died at 37 years old and you didn't even know you were gone if it had happened. What are those things that have always been there? Go do more of that.
With ongoing conflict in the world, from warfare to tribalism, in this episode we explore whether finding inner peace within ourselves can eventually cultivate outer peace in the world. Following a near-death accident which led to a long road to recovery, our guest today, our third-time guest in fact, Jean-Pierre De Villiers, is now on a mission to help people to find peace within whilst optimizing their life experiences. JP is an inspirational speaker, mental performance coach, author, and athlete who knows best from his work, who's known for his work with Olympic medalists, business leaders, entrepreneurs, actors, and award-winning film directors. He's spoken and shared the stage with some of the world's luminaries, including Tony Robbins, Lisa Nichols, Jay Abraham, Mary Buffett, Prince EA, and Jay Shetty, and many, many, many more. So I'm delighted to have JP again with us here today to explore this really important topic at a really important time when we're seeing this increasing conflict in the world. And I'd like to begin, JP, by unpacking whether it's possible to find peace outside in the world if we are in conflict within ourselves, whether we're in suffering. What is the relationship between our own inner being and our own inner peace? I would love to hear your take on this particular matter.
Thanks so much for having me on again. It's always a pleasure. We got into a really amazing conversation even before we went live. So I know this is going to be really amazing. And thanks to everyone listening or watching. I really don't believe that it is even possible. Not that it's difficult. I don't think that it's possible to find peace on the outside world until we find peace within. Because, this is not my saying, and I'm almost reluctant to say it because it's so overused, but the outer world is just a reflection of what's going on the inside. And if we look at everything on the outside, if we perceive it as a threat, it means that we feel threatened on the inside. So if we perceive anything on the outside from a psychological or performance psychology point of view, or sports psychology, or psychology in general, if anything is perceived as a threat on the outside, it's because of what is going on the inside. So this is not some woo-woo Tony Robbins malarkey, right? This is psychology. And the science behind this says that there is no good or bad stress. There is no good or bad situation, no good or bad circumstance in our life, pressure, external, I guess let's just call it a situational demand. There is only how we perceive it. So if we perceive things to be threatening on the outside, it's because we don't have the resources to cope with it. And when you are at peace with yourself, you're at peace with the world. I heard a great quote once, and I can't remember where I listened to it. So apologies if people are going, oh, you should have quoted the author, because that happens all the time. Sometimes you just remember the words because they inspire you without remembering who it came from. And most of the time it's been copied from that, they've copied it from someone else. But I heard something along these lines, that until we understand ourselves, we will never understand the world. And that really hit me. Like, we're trying to make sense of the world without first making sense of ourselves. It's crazy, because everything on the outside is an extension of our inner game and our internal existence. So it is key to first go within so that we can then go without. And I shared with you before we went live that if we look at the people living in their highest values, in their calling, in their purpose, and why they were put on this planet, they're at peace. Nelson Mandela, did you ever see him? Oh, I can't believe what's happening in the world. Gandhi, Mother Teresa. I can go on and on and on and give all the different examples. But when you see them speak, they're at peace within themselves. They know why they're here, and they're living that. And that's why I think it's everything. And, from my own personal experience, Dan, I've been on purpose most of my adult life. And then just recently, because of my accident, rather than call it an accident, let's call it a spiritual awakening, because that's what it was. and then feeling called to go deeper within that awakening, like a lot of people do. Once they've experienced some kind of awakening, they want to explore that more and more. And as I did, I unpacked a lot of stuff and realized that there was more for me to heal, there was more for me to see, there was more for me to understand, so that I could become more than I ever was. And as I did that work, deep work, dark work, scary work, I realized that I wasn't living my truth, my calling. And this was after last year in 2021. I retracted. I pulled back. I retreated. On my 40th birthday, I said, that's it, enough. I'm not doing events, this. I'm only doing private coaching. And I justified it to myself so beautifully and to everyone else because I'm a storyteller. And I told myself a beautiful story about why I was going to do less. But it was because as I continued to do more of the work, because now I was only having one Zoom a day at max, I just focused on me. And over 6 months, I became very clear about who I was and who I wanted to be and who I was not, and the confrontations that needed to, or the confrontations I was having, and the incongruencies I was having in my life, and they were showing up over and over again, the changes I needed to make. And I realized that, man, because I wasn't at peace within myself, I told myself a story elegantly of why I wasn't going to serve so many people. It's just crazy. And as I started to learn to understand myself, I was just like, JP, what are you doing? This is ridiculous. You've done it because you've basically justified you not feeling good about what you were doing anymore. And if you were feeling good in what you were doing, you would want to do it more and more and more and more. So if we want to create peace on the outside, find the peace within first. Because when you are at peace, you don't want to consume because you're full. When you're at peace, you are full. You don't want to consume. You don't want, I want more time. I want this. I was me. Only for a few months. But when you are full, all you want to do is you want to give that overflow to others. And if you're really full, you're really peacefully from a happy, fulfilled place, not needing anything. You just feel, how do I want to do this? If I'm going to serve, but I don't need to serve, how do I want to do this? And then you commit to that, because when you're at inner peace as well, you also have a lot of courage, because you're at peace and equanimity with what is, and you're not even afraid to fail because you're not attached to anything. I could just keep going on, but I realize I don't even think you've asked me a question.
I'm just soaking it in. This is okay. There's lots to explore here.
Can't wait.
In the first instance, this is an interesting observation that I've witnessed, and you and I have been in and around the personal development industry for some time. In recent years, I think there's been, particularly in the context of the pandemic, there's been in somewhat some on some hands there's been an increase in kind of people embracing some inner work, looking and confronting their own inner values, reevaluating their priorities, looking at these big questions around what's my purpose, which I think is very powerful, and I'd like to explore that in a little while. But there's also been a critique during this time that we've witnessed that historically personal development focuses on the individual. And there's been this increasing conversation around what our human rights are and what our human responsibilities are. You know, what is our duty as citizens that comes with those rights? What are our responsibilities? And one of the criticisms I've seen levied at the inner work is that it's me, it's inside of me. But what I took from as you're exploring that, all of it was through the label of how can I do the inner work in order that I can serve others? So to me, I think we're at a risky spot where in the tribalist kind of divided world, we're seeing like this almost battle between individualism, collectivism, us, me and we. How do we consolidate these elements? You know, what is the interrelationship between our inner work and our outer world when it comes to society and the world that we live in? Could you unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I think that it almost sounds a bit egoic. Like, I feel and I'm sure I'm not the only one to feel this, that a lot that is wrong in the world is just a result of wounds that haven't been healed. Because if all our wounds were healed, would there be war? If we were healed human beings, would there be cruelty to animals? Would there be stabbings, shootings, domestic abuse, sexism, racism, speciesism? Would there be cruelty to animals? I mean, it's not rocket science. But if we were healed and we didn't have any wounds from our own trauma, from our childhood trauma, from adult trauma, experiences going on in our life, from ancestral trauma, if we were healed, there would not be harm. There would not be separation. There would not be fear. Because a healed heart is a loving heart. A healed heart is a loving, a compassionate heart. And over again, I've said the word we and healed. We and healed. And unless someone is listening to this or watching this disagreeing that actually, no, we would be the same, then if everyone is agreeing, actually, we'd be better if we were healed, then you have to agree that we and the healing of us, that is the answer. We're now creating this thing, what's it called? The Metaverse. Imagine if only 100% healed characters were created and put into the Metaverse. What kind of Metaverse would it be? It would be a loving and kind and compassionate and unified world. That would be the result of running those programs. But we have our own programs running for whatever reason that there may be. And the result is what we see on our screen of our life. We are always the answer. One of my own affirmations is when I see stuff happening in Ukraine or whatever country, or I don't like what I'm seeing in my immediate world around me or my close world around me, I have an affirmation that I always say, JP, you are the work. If you don't like what you see, remember, you are the work.
Well, I think that's a really profound statement that I'd like to explore in the context of your accident. I think there was a powerful reframe, a real life-changing experience where, we've talked about your accident in our previous episodes and the trauma that you went through, but to examine that as an awakening experience where that took you to a place where you deepened your self-awareness of your own inner wounds, trauma, and went on a healing and recovery journey. Now, I'm sure we wouldn't want for every individual to have to go through such an experience in such a way in order to find that point of awakening. What are some of the things that one can do if they feel called in order to start healing some of those inner wounds, or even seeking where those traumas are within oneself?
Great question. And, I believe that I went through that accident and went through so much in my life, like many others have, so that not everyone has to. And that you can learn if you're willing to be a student without judgment and just to observe what people have to share from their own experiences. You can learn from their experiences. So you never have to have, in my case, a near-death accident. Or I feel like a death accident. One person told me, I think you actually died and came back. So I wish I had some memory of that experience, but unfortunately, till this day, I still remember nothing, zero memory. So what can we learn from that? Well, going on what I just shared, which is learn from my own story and experiences, what I learned was that, one, we're not here forever. Doesn't matter how positive we are. It doesn't matter how healthy our practices are. Doesn't matter who our friends are, what our bank balance is. We're going to die. Number two, that all that really matters in life is that you're happy. And then number 3, for that reason, because spiritual happiness, rather than attachment or attainment or achievement, is to be in growth and contribution. How we choose to be and live, and how we choose to give as a result of who we've chosen to be and how we've chosen to live. It's to know what we value most and to live according to that. I think I speak for most people that have experienced any kind of trauma. It doesn't just need to be a road accident, but any kind of trauma that it woke you up to the truth. I think I speak for, if not all of them, but most of them. It's that the only thing that mattered after that moment of awakening was that you lived a life that was true to you. So take my advice. If you choose to, or take my opinion, that there is nothing in life that will ever give you the happiness, the fulfillment, the satisfaction, the joy, and the inner peace as living a life that you value. Not what other people value for you, not living a life that's chosen for you, not living a life that is swayed by the opinions of others, or living a life based on your past and who you thought you were 10 years ago or 20 years ago, or even a year ago in my case. It's as you have evolved and changed in your life, and as you continue to do so, do the inner work and ask yourself, what is important to me? Why am I here? What am I passionate about? What do I love? What are the patterns in my life? In meditation, sit and look back over a timeline of your life. What's always been there? How has God spoken to me through my own emotions, which he can only do through your emotions, your feelings, your intuition, God, he, she, the universe, Mother Earth, Father Sky, whatever you believe. But the greater power, because surely everyone listening to your podcast doesn't think that the world revolves around them. But whatever your greater power, how would they want you to live your life? Because they would only want, if you believe in any kind of God or divine power or greater, greater power, wouldn't they want the best for you? Well, the only way for them to remind you of what is important to you is through what you feel and how you feel. So look at what triggers you, what makes you emotional. But once again, go back and look at the themes and the patterns of your life and keep asking yourself, why have they kept appearing? You know, there's a saying, success leaves clues. I think Tony Robbins says that a lot. Steve Jobs said you can only connect the dots looking backwards. So look backwards. Look backwards and connect the dots. What has always been there in my life that I've been ignoring? And that actually, if I could do anything in the world, knowing that I'm going to die and I'm not going to be here forever, in my case, you almost died at 37 years old and you didn't even know you were gone if it had happened. What are those things that have always been there? Go do more of that. Because that is the universe speaking to you and saying, hey, I'm trying to tell you through your own internal guidance system that, man, this is for you, this is for you, this is for you. Like a monk told me, I stayed with a Shaolin monk in Germany in a Buddhist temple for a few weeks. And he said, if it feels good, it probably is. Or sorry, he said, if it feels good, it's probably right. If it feels bad, it's probably wrong. I mean, just so simple, right? And you and I were saying before we went live, we're talking about a monk that I went with the intention of us having this conversation today. I went and found some monks at a Buddhist temple called Wat Chalong in Phuket, Thailand, where I currently am. And they just say things so simply and so elegantly and so beautifully, but so powerfully. If it feels right, it probably is. So, you know, I've gone off on a tangent here, but to go back to the near-death experience, what can we learn from that? What, if you want to listen to my own experience, it's to not wait for death to remind you of life and the law of impermanence. Every single day, we have one day less. You're going to watch this, you're going to wake up tomorrow, and there's going to be a gap between when you watch this and the next day. And that gap is closed. It's gone forever. And for us to be at peace within ourselves, we can't do what people tell us to do. Our market, our industry, even the people that love us most, because they're trying to find their own inner peace. through finding out what is valuable to them and living in alignment with that. I would say that almost never take anyone's opinion seriously except your own. And therefore, take more time, create more time to listen to yourself. Because sometimes we already know what we want, but we don't listen. And the universe sends us a sign over and over and over again until a hit and run driver hits you head on and you almost lose your life because you've not been listening to your calling. And I've changed my life so much in the last 3 years. I've simplified it. I've harmonized it. I've internalized it. And the result of that, I'm living more in alignment now than I ever have done in my life. And look, Dan, it didn't come without massive disruption. But growth is painful. Change is painful. And on top of that, there is nothing more painful than staying where you're not meant to be, especially when you know you're not meant to be there. And no one is ever going to say at the end of their life that I wish I consumed more. All of the regrets come down to relationships and contribution and truth. I wish I was more honest. I wish I was more honest with others. I wish I was more honest with myself. I wish I lived in alignment with the things that were important to me, etc. So look at your relationships. Look at your own truth, i.e. values. And look at how you want to give more in the world and just go do more of that. And I've dedicated my life. I've always been a coach. I've always spoken about mindset. Change your life by changing your mindset. And then there's lots of other things wrapped around that, right? Mindset on fitness, mindset on nutrition, mindset on your relationships, mindset on business. But it's all mental. And for us to sustain a high performance, I'm going about high performance here, forgive me, but it's 16 years of coaching. To sustain high performance and to stay in a healthy mind, we have to have a healthy heart. And a happy heart equals a happy life. And a happy heart always shows on the outside. When people judge you, when people put you down, when people say, oh, you shouldn't be saying that, or you shouldn't be doing that, or they have a problem with how that you choose to show up in the world, it has everything to do with what's going on inside them because they're not happy. Because happy people don't judge. Finished.
Mic drop. Mic drop moment. I think there's so much to unravel. So I relate to the experience that you shared. For myself personally, I've had these kind of tap on the shoulder moments where I felt like I've been called to lead or called or directed towards my purpose over the years, even from an early age. In fact, I didn't quite have an awareness of the signal at that time. You know, I'd not had any outer guidance system to help navigate those inner reflections, those bursts of inspiration, if you will. But then in 2020, what led me to do the work that I've done in the last couple of years was this real strong tap on the shoulder. I was literally out walking close to my home, and it was,
I remember.
Yes, there was like a message that's saying, if you don't stand up and lead now, this is your last chance. It really felt like a warning. It felt like a warning, wherever that came from.
I wish I got it the way you got it.
I say, a little warning. Maybe you did. Maybe it's interesting. Maybe you did. You know, how do we know? Because which one of those warning signs?
No, I mean, I could have used not having the broken legs and the...
That's what I'm saying. But maybe in the busyness of what was preceded it, maybe there was a tap on the shoulder, but you hadn't had the space to hear it or see it. I don't know.
I agree.
But either way, that point when we get to that point of reflection, I stepped up to the call that time. It felt like I could not avoid it. But reflecting back on the prior times where I'd not taken the shot, where I'd backed down, it was my own doubts, it was my own fears. It was an internal challenge. But even when I took the step and actually said, now I'm going to step up and lead, recognizing that there will be challenges, and there still is on a daily basis, there was a moment of hesitation where it was about, what will other people think if I do this? And it made me reflect, as you were speaking, about the judgments of others, because children, as they grow up, they have an enormous peer pressure. You know, they're expected to conform to certain ways of behavior, which could be from their education, from their peer group, from their parenting. But I've realized that continues into adulthood. You know, we kind of accumulate around these tribes. You know, we and more so, this kind of world of identity politics that we live in. You know, there's tribalism. You know, we believe this. Come over here if you believe this. If you don't believe this, then you're no longer part of our group. If you go over there and you like this but you don't like that, you're not part of. There's all of these we've got this really compartmentalized society that's worsening and deepening and fragmenting. So there's, again, even in adulthood, this huge bias towards conformity to the group ideal. And I am concerned about that from a number of perspectives, but in the context of this idea of feeling judged, you know, because if you're in a community and you want to make a certain choice and your other community members are making different choices, there's an enormous amount of social pressure to not go ahead with the decision that you wanted to make. So how do we transcend that? You know, it's inevitable as humans, we still want a sense of belonging. We want to feel a sense of community or communitas. But that fear of judgment, to me, I made the distinction 2020 that true freedom is to escape the fear of judgment. But it's not a simple equation. How do we transcend that fear of what others think, and how do we step into our own, I suppose, loving witness? Because that judge is still within us. You know, I get triggered by things, I judge, and it's something that I'm working on within myself. So I'm just curious to navigate this, you know, on an individual level. How do we transcend our own judgments of others? But also, how do we act in accordance with our own will and purpose, which may be contrary to the judgments or desires of others?
First of all, not to sound like I have nothing else better to say, but first of all, in short, and then I'll expand. It is always the inner work, because when all human beings, because we're survival creatures, we have to understand everything. But when we can't make sense of anything or understand it, we have to place our own understanding of what it means. And to go back to what we shared at the beginning of our conversation, is there is no thing. There is only our perception of the thing. Or like I say, it's never the thing, it's the thing about the thing. So when it comes to judging is just a lack of understanding. That's all it is. It's when we don't understand something, so we have to create an understanding based on our perception, and our perception only comes from our past. It's impossible for perception to come from the future or what the truth is, because our perception is based on evidence. So when people judge, and when people judge me, I know it's just based on stuff that's going on within themselves. So when we stop judging ourselves, it's a result of us understanding ourselves better. And when we start to understand why people judge, we realize that actually it's not even about us in the first place. So we just go be us. So that's in short. When it comes to knowing to understand ourselves better, not to kind of, what's the saying, like pass the buck, like give an easy thing to say, but it is meditation. I've spent a lot of times meditating in silence. I spend a lot of time meditating for days in Buddhist meditation centers in silence, 10, 11, 12 hours a day. I've spent time with monks, in monasteries, in the Shaolin temple. I've even had a Thai Buddhist monk become my friend, and we would do Zoom coaching or Zoom sessions, and I would make donations to his monastery in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And all of this time with these enlightened people or people seeking enlightenment and devoting their entire existence to detachment, everything I've learned from them has been about being the observer of what's going on in your internal world and staying the observer. Because if we look at first having a thought, if we look at it kind of like 3 layers, right? We start at the top and then we'll go 2 more layers down. So this is like the highest level. We have the thought, and then we come down and we observe the thought. Inner peace is when we never go lower than that. We think and we observe. That equals inner peace, happiness. But what a lot of people do is they go to the next level, and that is, let me judge the observation. And meditation teaches us to never go beyond that threshold between being the observer, either the observer of whatever's going on in the external world, observer of your thoughts, or even the observer of the observer. But when you move to the judgment phase, that's when we create suffering in our life. You cannot have suffering as your perception of what's going on in the world, or of your perception of what's going on in yourself, if you never drop below observer. I mean, even for me, I know that, I practice that, I teach that, but even me saying it, I just think it's so crazy. Suffering cannot exist in your inner world, in your mind, in your heart, if you stay the observer. And then to go back to judgment, if we can live as the observer, we free ourselves from judgment. We free ourselves from making decisions based on what we think other people are thinking of us. And it's a really messed up game. I think Jay Shetty says, I am what you think I am, I think I am, you think I am, I think I am. It's crazy. Right? Why not just be who you want to be? And that brings me to the last thing I want to share. I've had a lot of great coaches and teachers and mentors in my life. And, something because I know someone's wondering it, right? Something I've always been passionate about is tattoos. The more deep work I've done, I actually, only just in the last 12 months, have realized through meditation and plant medicine that I think in a past life, I came from a tribe. Because I've always felt this warrior sense in me. And when I was 12 years old, dude, 12, I was figuring out ways to tattoo myself. And I was in a loving home. I mean, it wasn't perfect. We didn't have money, but it was loving. It wasn't like I was, cutting myself or anything like that. But I figured out how to tattoo myself. But up until the age of about 36 years old, I kept all of my tattoos hidden. And just at that point, a year or so before my accident in 2019, I went to this event. I met this coach. She became a dear friend of mine. She's still my coach today, Lisa Nichols from The Secret. A lot of people know her. And I said, Lisa, I was at an event in Ireland and she was there and we had dinner. And I said, Lisa, can I ask you something? Like, how do you deal with people judging you? And she said, give me some context. I said, well, I was wearing a suit, right? Because you knew me back then, right? I was always rocking tailored suits. And which had a lot to do with caring what people thought about me and who I needed to be perceived as successful. And she said, give me some context. And I said, well, I'm starting to do a lot of corporate work. But I find myself when I go into a boardroom or a meeting or a pitch, whatever, I pull the white part of your shirt. Is it called your cuff, your sleeve?
Yes, or the cuff, yeah.
The cuff. I'll pull the cuff down to cover my tattoos because, and these were my words to her, because I was scared that if they saw my tattoos, they wouldn't want to work with me. Anyway, the next day at the actual event, because this dinner was pre-event, 3,000 people in an auditorium in the Dublin Convention Centre. Lisa does her thing on stage, has everyone eyes on her. She goes off stage, she walks around, and I'm watching the big screen, because I'm right up front, first row. She's gone off stage, and I can't see her. I'm just watching the big screen. And like, wow, this is a powerful story about being non-negotiable, about living your truth, about not caring about what others think of you, because then you'll always be dimming your light. You'll never be living in your full potential. And I'm just like, yes, yes. And then I see her walking, and she's, holding on to people, and people are like listening with like, just, open to every word that she's saying. And then I see her walk. And eventually I see myself in the big screen, and I'm like, what? And all of a sudden it's like, it doesn't make sense. Lisa's behind me, the screen's in front of me. And anyway, she taps me on the shoulder and she goes, get up. And I'm like, what? Anyway, she turns me around. I'm first row. So she turns me around, and because it's like 3,000 people, naturally or subconsciously, I push myself back against the stage. I can feel it up against the lower half of my shoulder blades. And she goes, take off your top. And I'm like, everyone laughs. She goes, take off your top. No. She looks at me and she goes, do you think I'm kidding? Take off your top. And I'm like, bro, look, I've been pretty confident my whole life, but I was not confident in this moment. Take off my top, tense the abs, and I'm topless in a business convention with Jack Canfield, Robin Sharma, etc. And I'm just standing there, and I'm like, what the hell is she doing? I hope you don't mind me going on, but this is a really good story. And she turns to the audience and she does a live coaching. And she goes back to what she was talking about, being non-negotiable, being you, loving yourself enough to bear yourself for who you really are and be seen for who you really are. And she says all of that stuff. And she says, JP is afraid that if he shows himself for who he really is, that people won't want to work with him. And she goes, who will want to work with JP? And obviously, because she's like, oh, he's a fitness and mindset coach, and I've got six-pack abs or whatever. And like, so many of the audience put up their hand. And of course, they're playing the role, of being the supporter and the hero and the rescuer. And anyway, so many people put up their hands. And she looks at me, she looks at the audience, she looks at me, and she looks at the audience. And obviously, she's mic'd up, so she's speaking to everyone. And she says, JP, never forget this. Your people will always be your people. And if they choose not to walk with you, it's because they're not your people. And that moment set me free in such a big way. Because like many other moments in my life, that freed me up from things that were holding me back, particularly feeling like I need to look a certain way. I got hand tattoos, I've got face tattoos, I've got neck tattoos. I started shaving my head because I realized I only kept my curly locks because everyone told me you had nice hair. It was attachment. It was feeling that I needed to be perceived a certain way. And when you forget that, and you forget about what anyone else thinks of you, and the only thing you care about is what you think of yourself, bro, life becomes a whole nother game. A whole nother game.
Well, man, I felt like I was in the room with you there. Thank you for sharing the story, but not only for sharing the importance of that story. There's a salience to that is personal to me right now. I shared with you prior to this interview that in the last 24 hours, this has been recorded on Thursday.
And by the way, that's why I really wanted to go into it deeply. I've never told that story at that level. So thank you for your patience, and to everyone for listening to that long expanded story.
But no, thank you. Honestly, it's the Thursday, the 5th of May today. The last 24 hours, I've been subjected to this defamation onslaught, and I've gone through so many emotions as a result of that, because it's just been, because I've reached quite a few people in the last few years, this thing has basically gone viral, and I haven't been able to escape it, whereas previously I would just brush it off and just do my thing. But it's in conversation in our communities, in our circle, all over social media, amongst my team. And, let's get straight, most of all of the accusations, in fact, are unfounded. But the piece, there was this piece around this idea of entertaining new age practices, for instance, based upon the fact, first of all, that we had a breathwork class inside of our community, which is
I
actually...
was so happy to see that, dude.
Yes.
So happy.
Yes, I mean that is about as new age as you could get, because it's thousands. it's about thousands. It comes from yoga, which is thousands upon thousands of years old, and recently, you know, the science around it is profound. But that therefore is an example of a judgment. And just leaning into the conversation for today, I recognize actually I can't make this about me. It's the individual who is on their journey. I only want peace and love and happiness for that individual, despite being transgressed myself and having to deal with the onslaught of that. But I start to go within and think, well, how do I show up in the world as a result of this? And I always look still for constructive feedback, looking for those little nuances. Okay, is there a different way I can position what we're doing in order to reach more people? Because I believe in the work that we're doing. But ultimately, living inside of my truth and being a role model for doing that and giving myself permission then gives others permission to do the same. And your line about the tribe, you know, if you don't want to walk the walk with us on this Elevate journey, that's cool, groovy.
We love you.
We love you
anyway.
Absolutely. Yep. Tap in, tap out, take what you need. It's all groovy. I won't judge you for it. It's all beautiful. So it's going back to that point of permission and recognizing that freedom is the fear, for me at least, is to be free from judgment. And I think this is such an important conversation because the world is noisy, and you know we were getting the sound and light ready for the conversation, and we had the aircon on or off with this faint buzz, right? Which I can only hear because I've got studio.
Oh, you can hear it. I'll turn it off again.
No, I can't hear it now. I can't hear it now. I'm joking. I said at the beginning, I mean, I've got studio, but I can't hear it now. But it's almost like the world has a faint hum, and it's not always a faint hum. Sometimes it's loud. I mean,
that's powerful.
You know, you open up Twitter and it's like verbal bullets. It's like, you know, it's like opening up a door to a verbal conflict. So there's so much societal expectations to conform to certain behaviors and show up in certain ways. But it's also the point about you shared of the meditation, then that background noise, it makes it so difficult for us to actually create the space to go within and have those important reflections for ourselves. And I have seen this worrying concern about people describing things like this as, you know, once you attach a label to something with a negative connotation, immediately it creates a barrier for people. And again, you've already explained that comes from fear, it comes from a lack of understanding, and I can see that. But it's a real shame, because I've even seen things like these practices described as selfish, and to me it's the opposite. It's selfless. Self-love to me is the most selfless act. You know,
100%. Yeah.
So I'm curious. You know, how do we preserve these practices that enable people to have these profound experiences for themselves, in order that they can show up not only for themselves but for others in the world? You know, everything you've spoken about is about how do you serve more deeply. You know, it's all in service to others. I suppose I have a concern and anxiety or worry for the state of the world, and in the aggregate conversation, the macro level of, you know, we've got global conflict, we've got conflict amongst each other. Yet we've even got conflict about the means of which we can attain peace. You know, it just seems like a paradox. How do we break through all of that and just get to what is real?
Well, I think that, you know, rather than me go on with some long story, you know, I think once again it just comes back to understanding. You know, if I look at, you know, from my own studying of Buddhism, the philosophy of Buddhism, not religion. I'm not religious in any way. And really, Buddhism is a philosophy, although some people have taken onto that philosophy religiously. But the Buddhist way is a philosophy. It's a way of life. And, you know, in Buddhism, at the center of Buddhism, it teaches that there is suffering and that we can remove our own suffering. And our own suffering is removed by deeper understanding, which is why at the center of Buddhism and so many spiritual practices is meditation, because meditation increases your awareness and your understanding. Like, it's not rocket science. So what I have learned in my own raising of my awareness and of my own raising of my understanding of the world and of others and of myself is that when I have someone message or online do a comment, and in some way it places judgment or is nasty in some way, I always just think, thank you, universe, for reminding me that there's more work to do. And I know that sounds simple, but bear with me. We know yin and yang, right? The battle royale, the battle between the dark and the light, the in and the out, the summer and the winter, the opposites of everything. Well, perfect balance and the law of the universe, a law of the universe, perfect balance, and things being in its most natural state, in evolution, in seasons, in impermanence and death and birth. You can't have love without hate. It goes against universal law. So when I know I'm getting hate, I tell myself, whether it's true or not, that I'm obviously doing something loving to some people. And some people have to agree, and some people have to disagree if what I'm putting out is valuable. Or some people are going to agree and some people are going to disagree. And when someone shares something like, I did an interview, I forget, 2 years ago with someone that you put me in touch with. And it got amazing feedback and comments and, oh, this is what we need. And at the end of it, it was about focusing on inspiration and how this time of COVID is actually leading us to a better place. And at the end of it, it was, choose how to deal with it. Choose to laugh at what you think is ridiculous. Just laugh at it. Anyway, and someone wrote something really horrible. And I just thought, there's one more person I haven't served yet. Because if everyone was just agreeing, yes, 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 like what work is there for me to do? Like our work is not to convert the already converted. Whether selling a product or a service or a vision, our work is not to sell the converted. Our work is to sell those that are not converted yet. And that's why we live our life on purpose, so passionately, every day on that mission, driven by our values and our vision, because we're trying to reach the people that don't have the message yet. I would go as far as say, if you just want to serve people that already have the message, then that's really selfish, because then it really is just about you. Oh, I've got my fans, I'm good. But if there's more people that you can reach, you should try and reach those people. And how do we know there's more people? Well, sometimes they come in a fucking horrible comment. Or maybe they're just there to remind us that, hey, like I said, everything is perception. They're there to remind us all the time that, hey, if someone has something bad to say about you, it's because you're putting something out into the world. If I wasn't having a negative feedback or comments, it's because I'm not doing enough. I really am serious when I say this. And it's not from an ego place at all. But when someone sends something or comments something, oh, this is bullshit, woo-woo, or too spiritual or too I can't even say the bloody word, philosophical. I told you I should never do interviews at night. I just always think to myself, yes, I'm getting people's attention. And it's not always going to be the way we want. If we think it should be smooth sailing, well, get a fucking job. Get a job, go to work, go home. Because if you want to do something remarkable, something outstanding, something out of the ordinary, you have to understand that the ordinary are going to judge you because they don't like people that are not like themselves. And I think I said this to you before, or I said it to the monk this morning. We were having a conversation. I wasn't teaching him in any way whatsoever. But people always want for others what they have themselves. So if you are not in a good place, you will want other people to not be in a good place. And if I am not in a good place and I come across your thing and I see you standing up for what you believe or talking about breath work or whatever, I'm not going to like that, because that's a very empowering thing to do. And I feel very disempowered. So if you're one-upping yourself on me, I'm going to one-down you by putting you down. And it comes down to us being survival creatures. We don't like people that are not like us. We don't understand them, so we have to judge them. And we can judge them. Hopefully, we can bring them down to our level, and then we feel okay. One more thing on breath work. With regards to COVID and war and all that stuff, it's easy to judge and it's easy to blame. It's hard to do the inner work. And breath work, I mean, it's in the word, requires work. And a lot of people will not agree with meditation fixing the world, or breath work fixing the world, or plant medicine, or whatever, because it all requires you to go within yourself. Even though it's free to do most of the time, they're too afraid to face themselves. So the easier, more comfortable thing to do is to judge the practice, or to judge the person giving the practice, or sharing the person giving the practice. But it is always us that is the work. Whether in judgment, whether in practice, whether in breath work, whether in observation, we are always the work. So when it comes to dealing with, I don't know, how to keep these practices alive, I mean, just if it feels right to you, keep doing it. And if people have a problem with it, know that you're doing something right. Because, you know, I get inspiration from so many different types of people in my life. And there's a great guy named Grant Cardone that has a lot of energy. And he says something very simply put and so true. If no one hates you, no one loves you. Jesus had haters. Well, that's what he said, right? This is me now.
Yes.
Jesus had haters. Gandhi had haters. Mother Teresa had haters. People that hated her. And look what they did in the world. So, once again, align yourself to what is true to you. And if breath work fits into that path, take it with you in your rucksack. You're not forcing anyone else to take it. You're not forcing anyone else to drink the Kool-Aid. But if someone wants to walk with you on your path, you're going to, from a loving, kind, and compassionate place, you're going to share with them whatever you have. Because that's what humans do. That's what we do when we're full, when we feel enough, when we're happy, when we're fulfilled, when we're at peace. We share whatever we have with others that choose to walk with us. And if they choose not to walk with us, we send them love, like you did when you said you sent a prayer for this person before we went live. Anyway, I could just go on and on and on and on. But look, all I ever want is for people to reach their full potential. I don't believe anyone is satisfied. Like I said, I've hung out with monks that are like, no, I'm not there yet. I'm still working. Got more work to do. I don't believe anyone is ever satisfied. And we should all live at our full potential.
So
For a long time, I thought it was external work. But it's all inner. It's all inner work. And then everything else just catches up on the outside.
So there's two things that I'm thinking here. Firstly, I'll just tackle one at a time. We've touched upon kind of our individual journey. We've touched upon the kind of interpersonal relationships within this kind of context. How then does that leave us in terms of the state of humanity? You know, are we experiencing a lack of fullness on a global scale? You know, is that external noise I referred to, is that depleting us? And if so, how do we change that? You know, we know on the individual, you've shared an individual level, but we've got this at scale mass depletion of loving energy, I suppose. This lack of fullness, it's pervasive, palpable, observable. I walk down the street, you can now look, if you're present enough, you can look into someone's eyes or in their body language, and you can see what their life experience is right now. I can see it in myself when I look in the mirror. The days I don't look in the mirror, I know I'm stressed because I don't like what I see. But how do we shift that? You know, how do we go beyond our individual practice into how do we cultivate this on a global scale?
Well, first of all, I'm just reflecting on what you just shared about, seeing it in yourself and looking in the mirror. I don't often, obviously, you look at yourself in the mirror for like when I'm doing my hair and stuff. I'm kidding. But, you look at yourself in the mirror and you go to the shower, whatever, but rarely look. I don't do it a lot. I don't do it enough. And when I do, you learn so much about yourself in that moment. How happy you are, how tired you are, how emotionally exhausted you are, maybe because what you've been doing and what you feel like you've been pushing through. So yeah, I love that you just shared that, because it reminded me to look in the mirror more and to confront ourselves, and to go back to the individual level of the work. It's confront yourself more often, and the more you can confront yourself, the more you'll be faced with the truth. Because like you said, in a different way, our face doesn't lie. Our face doesn't lie. And, I think in a way, Dan, I'm still trying to figure out the collective work that I'm doing in the world, or what am I doing for the collective? But all I know is until one individual is not healed, nothing will change. So when it comes to, oh yeah, this is all good, bloody breath work, spiritual nonsense, philosophical bullshit, whatever, let's get real, guys. There's fucking war going on in the world. Well, until one more person is healed, nothing changes. But when we can heal one person, and the reason why I go back to this, and I'm not going internal, I'm staying external, but one individual at a time, it makes it easy for us to all make an impact. Because no one listening to this or watching this or ever that I meet in my life, or that I ever meet in my life, can ever convince me that you can't help one person. How dare you tell me that you cannot help one person? When we have social media, podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, we've got more resources than anywhere in the any time in our world that has ever existed, for us to gain the tools, the strategies, the techniques, the permission to go out and just help one person. And that is how, in my opinion, to go back to what I said before, I haven't quite figured out the big picture yet, but I know this without any doubt whatsoever, that every single person watching this can help one person. And if you can remember, the intention of helping the other person is to do for them what you've done for yourself. Don't go to them before you've helped yourself first. So if you give to them what you've given to yourself, then that means that they will feel full. And then when they feel full, they will want to give their fullness to someone else. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a platform of 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000 people, just go out there and serve one person at a time. But make it your intention to fill them up second, and to fill yourself up first. Because if you are not full, if you are not at peace within yourself and at peace within with the way the world is, you will only give a fraction of yourself, a percentage of yourself to others. Because you'll say, I'm too tired, I'm too this, I'm too fed up. Look, I did it. I admitted it right in the beginning of our session. I had to go and fill myself up first. And now I'm back on purpose. I'm serving more people. I'm more in alignment with, people are saying over the last few months, JP, there's something about your social media, man, your posts are just so deep. I'm the same person. I just stopped putting the attention on the outside, and I started putting it more on what needed to be done inside. And then that poured out of me in the most natural, flowing way, where I felt like it didn't require energy or effort. So look, if we had the answer to the world's problems that we could fix right now, or in a way that we could fix it right now, we wouldn't have the problems that we have. But we have permission to act immediately with immediate effect. And that's to go within, excuse my language, do the fucking work until you feel full, until you feel purposeful, until you know what you want to stand for, you know what you don't want to stand for, and you live accordingly every day. And if you get it wrong, you make it up the next day. That's the great thing about being a human being. You have consciousness. You can wake up tomorrow and realize, I didn't like the way I lived yesterday. So what do I love? What am I passionate about? Let me create a life that's in alignment with that, because as long as I can keep doing that, I will never have suffering. Aligning our life to what we believe is true to us removes all suffering, inner suffering. And then we go and give whoever we are in that moment. We go give it to whoever we want through products, services, platforms, podcasts, talking, community work, whatever it may be. But all it takes is for you to make an impact on one person. You cannot tell me, or at least you cannot convince me. You can tell me. You cannot convince me that changing one person's life doesn't change the world. You give me a big bowl of water, clear water. You drop a drop of black ink in there, and you tell me that water is not different. You might not see it, but the change is there. Just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I mean, that's God. You can't see the universe, right? There's no label out there in the sky that says the universe, but you know it exists. And I just think that as long as I can make a difference to other people's lives, I know the change has been made. And as long as I stay the observer and not the judge, without living with the attachment of how the change should happen, of where it should be, of what the government should say, of when the war should end, no attachment, just in service to others and myself, I know I'm at peace. And I pray for others to have that too.
Real talk, brother. Real talk. This is so important. And I remember coaching a conversation that I had myself several years back. And the coach said, whether you seek to serve 1 million people or one person, it is the same, because you do not know the ripple effect that that one person will create by showing up in a way that is truly profound, because each one of us creates a ripple effect in the world. And I remember just weeks ago listening to a podcast by Ram Dass, who's no longer with us. He spoke about this concept of the loving witness. And he said, when we can cultivate that loving witness within inside of ourselves, instead of the judge, the person that sees the world through love, then through our eyes, people can see the love within. And that creates permission and the space for others to see the love inside of themselves. And all it takes, therefore, is to look another person in the eyes with love, and you already potentially created the change. And then that person, if they start looking at others in their eyes with love, how many times can you do that in a day? And how many times does that ripple effect from one smile, one gaze? Within a day, you could reach 1 million people without even knowing it. It's the drop in the water. You don't even see it. That smile you gave.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You can reach 1 million people in a day without even thinking about it. You don't need a social media tick account to tell you that. That's where I really feel that this is powerful, because it's an invitation to others. And I feel that invitation to having this conversation, the standards that you hold in terms of going on that journey. But it reminds me of the importance of being willing to go on the journey and recognizing you can have a vision in your mind of the kind of level of inner peace and love that you wish to attain. And sometimes that journey can feel like a long road ahead. We know that, those emotions of love and peace are available instantly to us when we find ways to access them. However, it's also, I think, important to recognize, I've done shadow work in my time, and I know there's still shadow. It's still there. and I know there's anger in me, there's frustration. These things are here also to guide me and serve me. I don't seek to suppress them, but I also know there's parts of my character that I would like to work upon, and that it's okay that I don't have the answers to that yet. It's okay that I'm looking towards the future and having patience, trying to have patience, seeking patience. I think this is it's one of the things that eludes me, and perhaps in finding patience, I'll find the keys to the other things that I've yet to overcome. But I think it's about not having the pressure because there's a sense of I hear what you're saying, JP, and it's a beautiful standard. There's part of me that thinks I would love to go there right now, but there's the inner work to get there, even though we can access momentarily, through meditation, whatever, time in nature, those instantaneous moments where we are truly at ease, truly in love, truly at peace. But to create that sustained sense of love in the examples that you've given, where people show up fully with love on a really consistent basis, we just have to be willing to go on that path and recognize it's a journey. And actually, even just sharing the journey with others is actually a way to encourage others to walk the path too.
Such beautiful words, dude. And to go back to the patience thing, I often say that success requires both persistence and patience. Success at anything. But here's the funny thing: is persistence is easy, right? We just push. I have a willing mind and strong mindset and push. Patience is the hard part. But how weird that persistence generally is easy. Patience is hard for most people, but persistence actually requires you to do something, and patience requires you to do nothing. And that's how good we are at being human doings over being human beings. We actually find it easier to be persistent and push and push and push versus just being patient. And to come back to the energy thing, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just transfers, it changes shape and form, and energy is contagious. And when we show up, when I say a lot on social media, like, oh, protect your energy, manage your energy, it's not for you. It's for everyone that your energy touches. Now, if you're just a family person, if you choose to be a family person and nothing else, try and tell me that Elon Musk's mother didn't make an impact in the world. Martin Luther King's mother, regardless of what you think of these people or whether the impact was good or bad, you can't tell me a parent of someone that did good in the world wasn't impactful. Because you can be both impactful in a bad way and a good way. And it's going to come down to one thing. Were you full or were you empty? How did you impact the people around you? Were you full or were you empty? Were you at war within yourself and the world, or were you at peace within the world because you were peaceful within yourself? And to do that, it is simple practices. Happiness is a practice and a feeling, because you can feel happiness in any moment and you can practice happiness practices. 1, pray. It was based on Dan's recommendation. JP, you're in Thailand. Any chance you can go hang out with some monks or find a monk? I think you said, can you go find a monk and ask them about what they think about the crazy world right now and how we can find inner peace? And here's some of the things that they shared with me. Answering the question how we can find peace within ourselves. Number 1, pray for others. That is enough. Because that means that you're creating a loving and kind heart within yourself. If you're praying, you're creating love and kindness within yourself. If you're angry and resentful about what's going on, your heart is not in a good place. But if you're praying for others, your heart is in a good place. And number 2, when your heart is good and your heart is happy, it will show on the outside on everything that you do. And in everything that you do. Number 3, don't do anything other than find happiness today. You can't be happy tomorrow, today. But we try and create it for tomorrow, for next week, and therefore lose our happiness. They said if you lose your happiness today, you'll keep losing it over and over again. But when you can find happiness today, happiness comes tomorrow. Number 4, take control of your emotions by giving more love and peace to your heart, and do it one breath at a time. Practice on just one breath. Put yourself in a good place. They were looking around the Buddhist temple saying, oh, just look around. Look, oh, pretty tree. And just take a deep breath into your heart. And then one breath will become 5 breaths. 5 breaths will become 5 minutes. And the time will extend, and your happiness and peace will deepen the more you practice this. But don't focus on tomorrow, just focus on today. Because until you can find happiness within your heart today, you will never be happy. And the last thing they shared was, remove the luggage. Every day. No, actually, they said it like this. Remove the luggage. Don't try to think too much. Every day what we're doing is we're taking on the concerns of everyone, the world, all the problems in the world, and we stack them into suitcases, and we carry these suitcases around all day. They tire us out. They frustrate us. We get angry. Now think about it. You've ever been to an airport, you got lots of luggage, you're with someone else, and you're taking all the bags, and you just think, guys, just give me a break. Can someone else take this? But we don't. We don't give ourselves the break, i.e. meditation. And we just keep carrying this luggage all the time to a point that we just feel terrible. So in short, put down the luggage and stop thinking so much. So it was really great. It was a really great visit. And this has been a really great visit too. Thank you so much for having me, dude.
My pleasure. Thank you, JP.
I don't need to go. I'm just saying off the back of that, sharing what the monks shared as a result of you encouraging me to go on my scooter and find monks, which is quite difficult, by the way, because none of them spoke English.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you for taking that step. It's curious and interesting enough. I had a text from a friend this morning who, just by coincidence or not, was also visiting a Buddhist temple here in the UK. Someone I hadn't spoken to for a couple of years, and they were offering. They said, would you like me to give a prayer for anything? I said I'd like to pray for peace on earth, and not just limited to those areas in conflict like Ukraine. I'd like to pray for peace for those who are suffering through economic hardship, through stress, through anxiety, through all of the stuff that's been happening the last couple of years. And we talked briefly about this defamation, this slander piece. I said I want to wish for peace for that individual too, but also peace for myself, because I carry a lot of luggage, right, in the work that I do, and actually it's important. And my team alongside me will help carry that luggage, but it still means that we are carrying a lot of luggage. And the paradox of living with a full heart and the emptiness also in our life, and allowing both those paradoxes to coexist, it's just to me, is a beautiful notion that I'd like to pursue, that fullness of heart, yet a lightened load where it's perfectly okay to be in stillness and in emptiness.
Yeah, man. I don't think happiness is ignorance, where a lot of people do. And I think happiness is intelligence. Because if you look at monks, once again, they know how to be happy, and they know how to not be fazed by anything in the past or the future, what's going on in the external world or what around them. They're just not fazed. I think happiness is true intelligence. And show me a happy person, and I'll think that this person's, they've figured it out. And I, like you, Dan, have, to go back to the healing your own stuff, I've committed my life, even dissolving relationships, moving places, changing what I do over and over again, to continuously living an uncompromised life. And not just uncompromised life by what I stand for today. No, unpacking every piece of luggage that is holding me down. And I'm still carrying luggage. But the more we do the work, the lighter our life gets. Or we just keep carrying it around for the rest of our life and blame everyone for the way the world is. It's a choice.
Well,
either one requires work. Either one requires work. Carrying this shit around for the rest of your life, or having the courage. So I'm going to say something very quickly. Sorry. There's something that I forgot that I wanted to share. How do we do this? How do we make these moves to inner peace, etc.? It's confidence. I've just released a new book today on Amazon. The ebook is available now. It's called Self-Confidence. I don't mention this in the book, but as a simple framework for self-confidence, 3 C's. If you're to move confidently in the direction of who you think you can be, of what you want to do, blah, blah, blah. Number 1, you've got to have clarity of vision, of values, of purpose, of your mission. You've got to have clarity of mind. And how you find clarity is through stillness and reflection. Number 2, you've got to have courage. Well, because obviously being confident requires you to stand up for something. And the only way to not get ridiculed or judged or whatever is to not stand up for anything and therefore stand for nothing. So it requires courage. Number 3, it requires calm. And that goes back to what we've been sharing for over an hour. It goes back to what the monk shared with me. You've got to have a happy inner state if you're going to live confidently in your calling, in your life, in whatever it is that you do with your life, however you choose to serve. If you're going to have the confidence to go after that, you've got to come from a calm place. Otherwise, you're going to be contagious in a very bad way. Sorry, I cut you off, but I just really wanted to share that before and I didn't. My apologies.
This has been a profound conversation, but I'm guided to ask a final question if you're open to it.
As many as you want, dude. This
will be the second interview in a week that will go to 90 minutes. These are some powerful conversations. You talked about how we could carry that luggage through our life until the end of our life, or we could carry that fullness in our hearts to the end of our life. I want to address an important subject. One of our audience recently suggested this inside of our community. They said we need to be open enough to have a conversation about death. The last 2 years, we've witnessed at scale the fear of death in visceral and palpable form. As the media has had this non-stop stock tick of people dying and suffering. How has your relationship with death changed since your accident?
Whew. I said this to someone about a week ago. I probably think about death an unhealthy amount. Because I've made some very courageous, confident moves in my life. Transitions, disruptive decisions in the last year let's say the last year, or a lot in the last year. And every time I find myself wavering, I keep going back to death. And I remember, you know what? Upsetting that person doesn't really matter. Oh, you know what? I said I was going to do that in my business and now I don't want to do it. It doesn't matter. You're going to die. I said playfully to this person, and I say it playfully now, that I think of death probably too often. But seriously, death has probably been one of my greatest teachers. Because every time I find myself willing to compromise in any way whatsoever, I remind myself that I'm not going to be here forever. And then I just make that decision from that place. And in a way to phrase it in a coaching question, or as a coaching question, if you could wake up every morning and ask yourself this question: if I know that I'm going to die, or if I know that I'm going to die, what would I choose to do next? You'll be very, very shocked at what comes up after that, if you do it every day. Because it's easy to listen to a podcast or go to an event or work with a coach and ask it once in a blue moon. But when you ask yourself every day, here's better English, knowing that I'm going to die, what am I going to choose to do next? That'll change your life. And I'm not saying that it will be in a good way, because a lot that exists in your life or our life is as a result of settling and thinking that, oh, one day, or, I should be happy with, or not actually reminding ourselves of the ultimate truth, or one of the ultimate truths, which is you're just here on a temporary basis. And no matter how much you do in your life, every day is one day less. And, I do an exercise called the wake-up call, where I pull out a big whiteboard and I do a big square. And the vertical line is 100 years. The horizontal line is 24 hours. And I get people to mark off, how many hours do you sleep a day, right? Take that off. How many years do you think you're going to live to? All right, take off what's already gone, what age you are, and whatever age is, if it's 80 years, let's cross out 80 to 100. All right, let's work out what age are you going to slow down, right? Whether you call it retiring or just not having to work for money, what age is that? How many hours a day do you spend eating and doing stuff that you can't be multitasking, working on your purpose, your family, your vision, your purpose, your values, etc.? Cross that out. You know what happens? Most of the time, if I'm working with an adult, they have between 20 and 30% left of their life. And when they look at that, they go, oh shit. And I've had people, get up and want to go straight after that and realize that, man, I've not got a lot of time left. I've had people cry, been like, that was actually a really miserable exercise. Like, why'd you show that to me? But it wakes you up to the truth. And for me, the most game-changing thing in my life, post-accident or post-collision, because I don't believe it was an accident, is just this reminder of death. And I believe through my books, through my talks, through my coaching, that I can use my story of near death to inspire and encourage people to go and live. And I'm not attached to the outcome. Obviously, I want as many people to live their best life, but it doesn't matter to me who chooses to and who doesn't. Because what matters ultimately at the end of the day is that I choose to live my life. And as Gandhi said, his life is his message, or was his message. If I can just be an inspiration or encouragement to others by choosing to live my life, by acknowledging death, and that reaches one person and affects them or infects them in a positive way, then that's good. So yeah, I've never been asked that question. Well, not in the last 3 years, but I'm really glad that you asked that, because it feels really weird. I hope you can tell, like, I'm kind of like looking in myself while I'm talking to you. But I love death. I love death. And even while I'm sharing it with you now, I'm thinking there's certain things that I'm still not doing fast enough, because I get caught up in the how or the when. And one more thing that the monk or the abbot actually shared with me. There was a monk and an abbot, and for those that don't know, abbot is the kind of manager of the monks or the monastery, and definitely the monks, and head of the monks. Sorry, manager, and was so good. What was it? You know, I often say in my own coaching, don't be obsessed by the vehicle in your life, because the vehicle will change. Stay obsessed about the vision. Stay obsessed with the vision. But the vehicle will change over and over again. It's like an action film, right? They jump out, they go on the motorbike, and then the car, and then they jump over the truck, and they don't just sit there and, oh, you know, this isn't getting me to where I want. You know, sometimes you've got to change your approach. But the monk said, know that you have to be on the journey. And know that you have, know that you have to be on the journey, right? You're on the journey, but don't care about the when, the where, or the how. Just be on the journey. And I just thought, I've never heard that like that before. It's amazing.
It's so freeing, actually. It's so freeing.
Yeah.
Because we tie ourselves in knots about those latter questions.
Yeah. Yeah, me too, man. Me too. Look, I'm a student of this stuff, dude.
Well, I love the exercise you shared about the timeline of one's life and how long is left and creating that estimate. I've been through a similar process, and then I was curious about what would happen if we collapsed the timeline, you know, if I collapsed the timeline. So by that, I mean, if I felt I had 20, 30, 40% of my life left, but I said arbitrarily, what if I was to die in 1 year's time, what would be most important to me in that 12 months? What do I want? How would I want to leave this world if I had 12 months? But then I chunk it down again. What if it was 6 months? What if it was 90 days? What if it was a month? What if it was a week? What if it was today? What if it was this next hour? It put me in a space when I went through that exercise to what was really important. Because if I truly had 1 hour or 1 day left, what were the things that I'd be wanting to do? You know, make peace with my family, where we've had arguments and we've had fallouts, and I haven't shown my best self. I wouldn't worry about anything else. That would be the very first thing that I did, make amends to those nearest and dearest.
Why?
Why?
Is it fair to say, it's not, I don't want you to overthink it, but is it fair to say that because it would bring you happiness?
It would bring peace to me, yes.
Yeah.
It would bring peace because it's unresolved within. And that piece about carrying trauma. Yet we assume that we can live forever, and we never get to that hour until the hour comes and it's too late. It may be too late. So I actually went through that exercise, and I actually made a phone call to my father. I got myself into the space where I imagined I had 24 hours left to live, and I forced myself to have one of the most powerful conversations, most difficult conversations I'd ever had in my lifetime. And it was just to call my dad and tell him I love him. Sounds so easy in practice, but in the culture, the family culture, you know, the history of the relationships between me and my father, him and his father, and so on, you know, expressing emotion, showing love. This was just not something that was done within men. But I couldn't live like that because I knew one day I'd have a child myself and I would want to be able to tell my son I love him. But it wasn't until I was able to collapse the timeline to witness and confront my own idea of death that I prioritized the activity that may have never come. And there was something inside of me that said, if I got hit by a bus today and I never had that conversation, it would be my dying regret. But you can expand it. The good news is you can expand it back out and say, okay, 6 months, 12 months, 20 years, whatever, and start to think back to the vision. But bringing it down to like this hour, to me, it was like, okay, it really sorts the wheat from the chaff, and it brings it back to what's most important. But it also brought it right down to what's unresolved within me. And I haven't done that exercise again since that time. It's about 5 years ago. But if I was
maybe
to do
it's
it,
time. Yeah, maybe it's time to do it again. Yeah,
it is.
But
1 hour.
I would highly encourage everyone else to do that, and you know, a way for you to face your own mortality without having to go through it in a traumatic way. I'll definitely go that way. And I love how you just did that and went all the way back to an hour. And what's interesting is the reason why I asked you why would you want to do that, and it's because I feel that if we all did that exercise, and you said you only had 1 hour left, we would all make decisions based on one thing: what would bring us peace. So if you were at the end of your life and everything that didn't matter disappeared because you had 1 hour left and you would only choose to do what brought you happiness or peace or both, why not create your life that way? And to go back to what the monks shared, they shared one more thing. They said, all that matters is that you have a happy heart. That's it. The only thing that matters is that, I'm going to try and find the exact words actually, but it was something along the lines of, the only thing that matters is that you have a happy heart. If your heart is happy, sorry, no, that's one I said before. If your heart is happy, it will show on the outside. Yeah, I can't find it. No attachments. Oh no, the driving thing I told you. Focus on only feeling good today. Being happy today, that's all that matters. If you can be happy today, you'll be happy tomorrow. Just be happy. Find happiness and peace in your day without being attached to anything.
Without even being attached to happiness and peace. That's one of the, this is
yes.
This is,
now we're going to mastery level work. Yeah? I just want to say that again. Can you say that again? Because that's really powerful, man.
Without even being attached to happiness and peace.
Yeah. Find happiness and peace within yourself without being attached to it or the outcome. But, Jay Shetty is a friend of mine, and he once said to me, we were talking about how our life was at this time. We were both speaking in Dubai, and I was just like, I never thought I'd end up here. And he's like, me never. I was working for Accenture. And he said, you know what? Most people get what they want, but usually it's never how they expect. And I never thought at 40 years old, I'd be having this conversation about finding peace within yourself. But let me tell you this. In my 20s, I was like, how can I make a difference? How can I make a difference? And it took me on a journey of coaching and mental performance and all this stuff. And here we are. And I'm very blessed to have this conversation with you. Yes, it sounds very spiritual, but I'm a spiritual guy. It sounds very woo-woo, but I'm a woo-woo guy, right? But I'm also hard as fucking nails. You want to get in the boxing ring, you'll see, right? I can take a punch and I can give a punch. But I'm very, very grateful to you for continuing to do the work that you have done over the last, what feels like almost 3 years. And I'm grateful to myself for doing the work that requires a lot of courage and to confront the conflicts in my life so that I can free myself from all the things that we've been talking about, judgment, fear, blame, etc., so that I can step up into my full potential, into my highest power, so that I can be of service to myself, to you, to everyone, and anyone that's willing to listen. And I'm grateful to everyone listening. If you've come to the end of this conversation, you've given an hour and a half of your day in your life that you're never going to get back. And I appreciate that. I'm sure I speak for both of us. We appreciate that. And if it was of value to you in any way, there's a saying in South Africa made famous by Nelson Mandela, Ubuntu. I am because of you. You are because of me. If you got value from this, know that it has been passed on to you. And it is your choice to do something with it or to do nothing. But in short, remembering that all it takes to create a difference is to heal one person. And until, whether you can see that, whether you believe it, until one more person is healed, nothing will ever change. And start by not looking outwards. Start by just looking within. If you know there is healing to do within yourself, just go. Go to that place, get the support that you need, therapy, coaches, communities, and heal that, because you will never outlive and outgrow your own wounds. Never. You can do all the external work that you want and be relentless and push and succeed and achieve and attain and accomplish. But inner happiness, inner growth, you will never, ever outgrow your wounds. So if you really want to experience the ultimate success, which is personal freedom, we are the work, you are the work.
Thank you, JP. I'm deeply grateful for this conversation. We've had the privilege of 90 minutes of pure gold, in my view. There's so much that I personally have taken from this conversation. It's rare that I get to the end of a conversation and want to immediately listen back. But I really feel like I wish to re-examine what we've discussed today, because there is so much to embody, because there's the knowing, and then there's the doing and the embodiment of the concepts and the principles and the practices that we've discussed today. And to me, I know I'm on a journey, I'm on an adventure, and I wish to take these nuances, these distinctions, take them on board, experience them, bring them within, and actually learn and navigate the impact that these make on my life in order that I can serve the world in a greater way too. So I want to thank you for creating a mirror really during this conversation for me, and I'm sure many of our audience, if not all of our audience, to have an opportunity to reflect. And if you have been with us for 90 minutes, I'm truly grateful for you being here. But I hope that you've carved out the space in doing that to have an experience yourself. And as JP says, it's what you do with this knowledge, this wisdom, that counts. And I have no attachment to you doing anything. But it would be my wish for you that you do.
Absolutely.
JP, I want to close out by giving an opportunity. You spoke at the beginning or the early stages of this conversation about this vision of a past life where you were within a tribe. Where can people find your tribe today? You're creating an enormous amount of beautiful content for people who feel aligned with your work, your message, what you've shared today. What's the best way for them to come and be part of your tribe today?
So I'd probably say Instagram. I've slowly started detaching myself from things that I didn't feel were serving me, and really limiting where I energy. Using three apps or 4 apps. In terms of a community or people being able to comment and stuff, Instagram is number 1. It's JPDV CEO Coach, but just type in my initials, JPDV, and it'll come up. I'm there pretty much every day with a post, but the only place online that I share my daily life, from my meals to what inspires me to, this morning I just shared that I went for a beautiful walk when the road was empty in Thailand. And sharing my life, the only place I do that is Instagram stories. I post content on Facebook, mostly the same as the content on Instagram. And then I post similar stuff on LinkedIn. Once again, just my name, Jean-Pierre De Villiers, for both Facebook and LinkedIn. But kind of a little bit business related. Actually, one of my team is trying to take LinkedIn off me because they're like, "Oh, it needs to be more business, JP. You're always fluffy inspiration." But Instagram, I'm having a second attempt at TikTok because I tried it last year and I was just like, "This is not me. This is not my values." But actually, a friend of mine, and this is why it's important to always be a student. A friend of mine at my house visiting me from Switzerland said, JP, it's not that you don't like social media. It's you don't like how you do social media. And it's your perception of how you do social media. And it was like, he called me out. And I was like, you're right. It's like, I feel like I have to do this. And anyway, so rather than in my previous TikTok account, trying to do silly dance videos, whatever, not saying that I will never do them, but feeling like this is what feeling like I have to show up this way to be liked or followed, whatever. It caused me so much, I was not at peace within myself. I was like, no, turned it off after a few weeks. And now I'm doing just like a little bit of inspiration and the odd quote or 5 tips for this, whatever. But in short, Instagram. And then I'm not going to point anyone to my website because that's old. I mean, it's just there for anyone that wants to inquire about information for coaching. Yeah, that's it for now. That's it for now. You can pretty much find everything in my bio in LinkedIn with the what's it called? Linktree. Oh, you've put my Instagram there. I've just seen it pop up. Thank you so much. And of course, if you want to immerse yourself in anything that I've taught over the years and see my own transformation in the way I show up, please go to Amazon and get my books. I think some of my books, I've written 9 books now, but some of them that are on Amazon are How to Own Your Life, which is just about taking control of your life and your mindset and your habits and taking responsibility for where you are. I wrote Spiritual Fitness, which is actually a story of my recovery. So Spiritual Fitness, a white cover, was written post-accident. And it's all about how I chose to believe that that happened for me and not to me, and the 12 principles that I used to get me through my recovery in a very awesome, amazing, inspirational way. And I share those tools with you that I used from recovery in hospital all the way to being at home, to being on crutches, to getting back out on the road. And that's a really great book. And like I shared, my latest book, which is more for leadership and business, but also inspirational, is all about the skill of self-confidence. Didn't have it growing up. 0. And I'm confident, borderline arrogant, meaning I'm very confident, but some people unfortunately perceive me as arrogant. And they tell me very clearly and openly on social media. But I'm very confident, and I never used to be. I believed everyone did everything else better than me, everything, or more than me. And for that reason, I know it's trainable, it's teachable. And I've spent my whole life learning how to have confidence and teaching it as a result. And that's just a whole book, 120 pages, just on the psychological skills and the science behind building those skills and building up your own self-confidence and why it's crucial to living your best life.
Wonderful. Thank you, JP, for sharing.
That was a long share.
No, it's so powerful because, you know, I have every faith in every piece of work that you do. You know, there's such depth that goes into the way that you show up, and you know, you're a man of my own heart in terms of your own curiosity and seeking, and you know, a full trust that you know, your materials were there to serve people. So thank you very much for sharing those. And I haven't spent as much time on Instagram recently, actually, so I look forward to checking out your Instagram and getting
thank you, man.
Inspiration.
And if anyone's looking for a book with perfect grammar and pronunciation and, you know, blah blah blah, I can't even say all the right words, but as you can tell, I can't even speak a perfect English. If you're looking for a perfect book written in a perfect way, this is not a book for you, because all you're going to do is create suffering for yourself by turning another page and continually judging and breaking your heart piece by piece by piece, because it was taken from a talk. All my books are transcribed from powerful talks that I deliver. But if you want a good book, it's a really, really good book. Really good book. So much so that I just said to my book editor yesterday, I said, no more writing a book and then writing another book and just mentioning it to the odd person. We're going, and I guess this is a public declaration in a way, for the next 2-3 years, I'm just going to be mentioning this book everywhere I go, because I just know that if I can inject people with confidence, more confidence than they already have, they'll go do a little bit more than they've already done. They'll go be a little bit more than they've already been. They'll go give a little bit more than they've already given. And I'm obsessed about getting this book out and the skills that I teach in this book. So anyway, thanks again, bro. So much. Really enjoyed it. So good to see you.
Thank you. Likewise, brother. My final call to action to our audience today, in the spirit of Ubuntu, if you wish to share this conversation, please do. But also, we invite you to join our mailing list at danastingregory.com/podcast, where you'll be kept up to date with our latest interviews, our content. And if you would like to take the conversation further, then I invite you to join our Elevate Network. It's our private community where we expand upon the conversation, but we also host weekly events exploring concepts like this. So please join us at weareelevate.org. It's a community where we're focused on both personal transformation and social transformation on our path to making the world a little bit better than when we found it. So thank you so much for tuning in, sharing and engaging. And thank you again to JP for a wonderful and beautiful conversation.